Hello guys, this is Melanie from Three Natives and welcome to this new presentation where we will talk about industrial additive manufacturing, specifically about application development and qualification of AM series. I'll be with Joachim Zettler. Hi Joachim.
Hi, how are you?
Head of additive manufacturing of Premium Aerotec and CEO of APWORKS, a subsidiary of Airbus. So he'll be speaking today, so feel free. Please do ask him some questions in the Q&A. Joachim, I'll have a brief introduction of yourself, and then I'll leave the stage to yourself. So you're the Managing Director of APWORKS. Joachim became the founding CEO when APWORKS was initiated in 2013. Since the launch of the company, he established the market activities in various industries, such as automotive, robotics, mechanical engineering, medical technology, and aerospace. Having a strong background in production technology for small to large scale aerospace and automotive components, Joachim has been working since 2005 at the Airbus Group as a project manager and technical consultant. During his time at Airbus, he mainly worked for the civil aircraft business of Airbus in France on manufacturing process optimization and supported the introduction of lean manufacturing methods. So please, Joachim, the stage is yours, and I'll see you in a couple of minutes with the questions.
Yeah, thanks, Melanie, for the kind introduction, and also happy to talk to you all today. So good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are. The talk I'm giving today is entitled, I hope you all see my screen, so it's entitled Industrial Additive Manufacturing, Application Development and Qualification of Additive Manufacturing Series Production. What does it mean? It actually means I will give you a quick overview of what we are as a company and how we usually approach series production for additive. Briefly, an introduction about Premium Aerotec and APWORKS. Meanwhile, we are one of the largest European metal AM service providers. Premium Aerotec acquired us 2 years ago. And I managed, meanwhile, to also become responsible for their additive business in a very close collaboration with, let's say, the original APWORKS business. Most of you know that we are mainly known for Scalmalloy, a high-strength aluminum alloy we jointly developed with Airbus. We operate together with Premium Aerotec around 14 metal 3D printers ranging from additive industries to EOS to SLM solutions. And in the end, what we try to do is we try to offer an end-to-end value chain to our customers, no matter if it's aerospace customers or automotive, medicine, wherever the customers come from. Usually, we start with consulting. So we teach our customers how additive works. We help them identify suitable components that make sense. If there are no suitable components, we help them to shape business cases by engineering their applications to fit a specific target application and also business case. We have all the necessary production technologies in-house, ranging from printing, machining, NDT, CT scan, whatever you might need, we can apply. And in the end, all of this is accompanied by appropriate R&D efforts to come up with new parameter developments, new materials, and last but not least, new design methodologies. Because in the end, as we all know, additive only makes sense in industrial applications if we can come up with better performing products. So as most of you are aware, we designed exhaust components for the Bugatti Chiron Supersport, as you see in this picture. And this is a great example of an application that does not only look good, but it really makes sense from a business perspective, because we were able to increase the performance of such components and at the same time keep the price in a range that makes sense for the end customer. So the main question is always, and I guess most of you have the same issues, How is a serial application possible? For us, we distinguish between 3 scenarios, and I will go in my talk through all of them. First, we need to create some kind of added value. And next, of course, it's highly important for regulated industries to know how to qualify and certify this new process technology. And last but not least, we need the appropriate machinery behind to make a sound business case in the end. So if we talk about creating value, there are, of course, multiple ways to create value. For some customers, lead time reduction is more important than cost reduction. But let's be honest, cost reduction is also a huge lever. Mass customization is also something a lot of customers are looking at in combination with cost reduction, ideally. And last but not least, the holy grail, we would say, is always performance increase combined with cost reduction. So if we now focus, for example, on lead time reduction, we managed to, especially on small batch sizes, to support various Formula One teams in their efforts to quickly produce components at highest quality. Usually we talk about part sizes in the range of 1 to max 10, mainly for space components, motorsport components, or spare parts, where we need to be very quick, and cost is, let's say, not really important, which means lead time pays off, let's say, everything. We are in this lucky position that, given the aerospace qualification know-how we have, we can, even for such prototypes, we can always come up with very tailored quality setups that are not too expensive, but at the same time allow the customer to just meet his quality criteria, however large they are. At the same time, we have applications where it's all about cost reduction. So, I mean, this is a tooling design you see here, and it's basically, the loading conditions. So in terms of structural loading, it's nearly nothing. But in the end, you have this freeform design here, and the objective is very simple: as cheap as possible. And in such a case, you would probably not directly think about additive, but we managed to come up with an interesting business case that allows us to significantly reduce the cost compared to the traditional way of manufacturing, where it's all about tube bending, tube welding. Even though initially you would think this is traditional technology, it's cheaper, but in the end it isn't. So we were able to really show a business case by just reducing cost using additive. Last but not least, I guess some of you are aware, we are, as APWORKS in this case, we are also in the mass customization business on printing titanium frames for glasses, as you see here. I mean, this is quite interesting business since the cost per part are really, really low. However, the amount of components is quite high, and the design is always different. So in such a case, you need to come up with customized software solutions as well to help you master this design process, because you can't afford, to redesign every single component if there are small changes in the geometry desired by your customer. And last but not least, the holy grail, as mentioned, is always about performance increase. So that's, of course, always quite interesting, because if you manage to increase the performance, usually a performance increase is directly linked to more value add. And if you can add more value to a product, you can usually sell it at a higher price. And we showed it last year already at Formnext as well. We managed to work on these cold plates for the electric aircraft industry to cool batteries. And this is just one example where you can make use of very interesting geometry features, cooling, making sure that we cool wherever it's really necessary and avoid areas where it's not necessary, and at the same time combine it with a significant weight reduction. So, I mean, it's difficult to find those applications, we have to admit. But once you find such an application, additive obviously offers you a lot of varieties to really come up with interesting performance increases, and in the end also business cases. The same did happen actually for this exhaust on the Bugatti. I mean, it's not only the weight reduction, because usually in automotive, even worse than in aerospace, weight reduction is not worth as much as a lot of people think, even in aerospace. And so you have to really do a lot more. And in this case, it was possible to come up with a design that really makes sense, pleases the eye of the customer, at the same time increases the performance of the exhaust area, and is even road homologated. So this is, I think, a huge step forward we managed here. So if you identified, let's say, the added value for your specific application, then of course you also need to make sure that you can put this into a final product that you can manufacture. And there you need to really take care a lot about qualification and certification. And I think this is something we all, I mean, the whole additive industry still struggles a little bit, because I mean, it's still a young technology, and so not everything is qualified yet. We have not certifications for everything, so we have to do a lot ourselves. And for example, if we look at what we did at Premium Aerotec, I mean, for all of you who are not familiar, Premium Aerotec is one of the largest tier 1 aerospace suppliers, at least in Europe, next to Spirit in the US. And we started 4 years ago already with first part qualifications. So this is always the first step. The part qualification for Airbus aircraft, so commercial aircraft components. And you see, I mean, the component itself is rarely visible. It's a lot of test components, coupons around it that all have to satisfy certain requirements from the end customer in order to really make sure that such a part can be put into an aircraft in the end. We managed to do this for quite a lot of parts, titanium 6.4 parts mainly, for military aircrafts, for civil aircrafts, up to functional class 2.1, so which is fatigue loaded obviously as well. And all of this was still part qualified. So part qualification has one drawback. It's usually quite cost intense because it is specific for a part. And if you switch the component, then you basically start all over again. So that's why for us, right from the beginning, it was very important that we focus on so-called process qualification for the laser powder bed process. And in the end, I will come to that in one more slide later. Because I mean, what we learned from the part qualification in aerospace, we were easily able to transfer now to automotive first, because there, I mean, the requirements are not that high, as you can see here. So for example, for this Bugatti component, it also took us nearly 1 year to finally develop it, and also check various NDT and DT measurements that make sense in the end. However, part qualification also in automotive, directly compared to aerospace, was a no-brainer for us, even though it was also complex, but it was not as complex as for aerospace components. And I mean, as I just mentioned, the interesting thing is now moving from part qualification that we did for the Bugatti and for the these first aerospace components into process qualification. And process qualification, I mean, for the Supersport Chiron, as well as for aerospace components, is now the state of the art where we are. So we managed to finally get the Airbus certification in 2018, end of 2018, early 2019. And what does it mean? It actually means that now we are able to produce part families out of titanium 6.4 in the metal, with the metal powder bed process, on one machine we qualified upfront. So it's no longer part specific, it's really process specific, and we still keep it machine specific for the time being. So whenever we add a new machine, we do a delta qualification, then this machine is also covered by our process qualification. So with this process qualification, we are now able to change arbitrarily components we identify in the aircraft, and there are multiple of titanium components, we can still switch from machining to additive manufacturing up to functional class 2.1. I mean, what you see here, these are just, I mean, it's some brackets in the door surround area that we printed. You see, they are all inspired by nature from an optimization perspective to significantly reduce weight, and at the same time make sure that also the performance is given of these components. So these are shifted now. It's A350 components. We are still working to introduce the first A320 single aisle components in the next couple of weeks. And this will be quite a huge step forward, because, I mean, A350, I mean, at least before Corona, we talked about roughly 60 units a month. And if you have 2-3 components per airplane, this is already, at least for additive manufacturing, I would call this large scale manufacturing for us, a significant amount of parts we have in mind for the near future. So if you manage to come up with such a process qualification, that's why, I mean, it took us quite a while and a lot of money, but in the end it will help us save money now and also save lead time, because it's much faster now to switch new components to the additive manufacturing process. No matter if it's in the end automotive or aerospace, you can use this technology in whatever industry if you have such a process qualification. And last but not least, what we should never forget, no matter how good what kind of qualification and certification we have in place, and how perfectly you have a new component with a lot of added value, if you do not have the appropriate machinery behind, then you have a problem, because usually the business case would never work. Today, what we still see is a lot of manual work along the process chain. So we have separated process steps. Nothing is really, I mean, perfectly automated. It's hard to scale. So what we tried a few years back already to start with EOS is in the next Gen AM project to really come up with a fully automated production chain that allows to print, do the heat treatment, cut off the components, do the NDT, everything fully automatic, to really make sure that we have no more manual interaction and can just focus on optimizing the value chain to reach a complete balanced system in the end. And so we started this with, I mean, the basis of this is a quad laser system, so to say. I mean, this is state of the art meanwhile, and you can take an EOS, you can take an SLM, it does not matter. You need to optimize your process parameters for the highest build-up rates to really achieve interesting business cases in the end. That's at least even in aerospace, meanwhile, the target we have. We entirely focus only on specific powders for additive. So ALSI10 is for us always the ramp-up powder, because it's well known. But in the end, what we see already is, if you really want to bring in high value for the end products, we focus on Skalmalloy, for example, or other confidential developments we do on the aluminum powder that will hopefully see reality in the next couple of months. And at the same time, this whole machinery needs to somehow fit together, which means right now, I do not see yet in the near future a situation where we have automatic machining directly linked, to the printing. I mean, I know there are systems out there, but in reality, the whole setup is quite difficult in the end to really automate. And however, this should be our goal, to really make sure that additive can fly in the end, really to a level where we have a lot of applications where it makes sense. I mean, right now, often we fail to realize business cases because of this lack of optimized supply chain or process chain, and then also supply chain behind. Because 24/7 operations is a dream, to be honest, today. But we hope that this dream will sooner than later come true. So any questions from the audience on these few slides?
Yes, thank you, Joachim, for this really interesting presentation. We have a few questions, actually. I'll take the first one. Regarding the aerospace part qualification, is it linked to the machine itself? So, for example, the serial number? And if yes, how do you supply during 20 years regarding obsolescence of the AM technology?
Yeah, I mean, part qualification, yes, it is directly linked to a machine. So not only to a machine, it's also linked to a part, as the name says. Yeah, I mean, very good question. Right now, we have some obsolescence or some spare machines, let's say. Always the same machine type, same software type. So there is no firmware change in between of qualification. It's always the same, no matter if the firmware is already upgraded or not, because otherwise we would enter into a delta qualification again. So yeah, I mean, I never thought about this, but what happens in 20 years? I think this is still an unknown and a question we definitely have to ask ourselves sooner than later, because we don't expect that these printers will last. At least the printers we use today will not be the printers we use in 20 years to produce the same components.
Yeah. Next question, do you qualify your post-processing as well as the AM machine? Well, you answered the last part, but the post-processing is maybe interesting.
Yeah, I mean, depending on what you consider post-processing. For us, post-processing is everything that happens after the parts leave the machine, after the parts leave the printer, let's say. So it would be powder removal, heat treatment, cutting by wire, by a saw, whatever you use, hipping, chemical milling, all the process steps. Everything is actually certified. So nothing happens in an uncertified state. So if we have what we call it's a qualified process chain, and this qualified process chain is end to end until we have the final product, including coating or corrosion protection or whatever in place.
Another question, what are the techniques you use for weight reduction of a part?
Techniques in terms of engineering?
I'm guessing, yeah, maybe engineering, software.
I guess, yeah, I mean, we use state-of-the-art stuff and some, let's say, self-developed software. Mainly, it's Altair-based products, Autodesk, and I mean the big players: Altair, Autodesk, and Dassault. And we try to add our magic bit by own scripting, Python scripting, to just link these kind of softwares together.
Okay. Another one, actually, there are a lot of questions, so we'll take as many as we can. So we saw that application development is really, really important. How do you qualify customers and their project to decide whether it's a viable candidate? And do you use the same criteria for your own internal application development?
Yeah. I mean, in the end, what is always very important is that we get a better understanding jointly with our clients. What are they really looking at? I mean, you saw there are multiple ways, to in the end justify why we should jump on additive now. I guess mostly it's all about cost in the end. So we need to somehow show that whatever we do ends up in a positive business case, but the business case itself is entirely driven by the customers. So some customers are mainly interested in lead time. So if we can manage, to come up with components 2 days earlier, it's already worth, I don't know, 2,000 euro more to them. While others don't even care at all about lead time or weight reduction. They rather care about performance increase or overall cost decrease. So that's why we first of all, we get a better understanding what the customer is really interested in. And then jointly with the customer, we really identify the applications that make sense, already knowing that, I mean, for aerospace, you just have to follow certain guidelines to make the application fit in the end. So we basically know how much it will cost, and then it's quite easy for us in a screening approach to identify suitable candidates once we have a little bit more insight what the customer is looking at. And this, by the way, is not only valid for aerospace. You can apply this to every industry we work with: motorsport, supercars, medicine, general industry, whatever you want.
Okay, great. I have time for a last question. So how does the design functional testing, so the pre-ESA approval, differ from production testing and inspection?
So coming from aerospace, what is typically happening is you have a kind of first article process where you have to do a 100% testing of the components, even more components, up to destructive testing, an entire set of components, until you are sure that you get the approval from FAA or EASA for this specific component. And once you enter into serious production, you just follow, standard aerospace related quality topics like Six Sigma, these kind of things. So mainly known from serial production, and this highly depends, on automotive or aerospace, wherever you want to deploy the parts in the end.
Okay. I have a few questions regarding metal 3D printing. How do you select design for metal 3D printing?
A very good question. So as most of you know, there is not yet the software tool you just click a button and you have the perfect design for additive, especially for metal additive. So what we have is we have a kind of knowledge base that we manage to implement into state-of-the-art structural optimization software. So we use a lot of numerical analysis upfront to identify the best possible orientation, best possible support structure setup. That also, and this is, I think, quite important, that does not only allow us to print the parts correctly, but also allows us to manage that we will pass the whole post-processing chain, because sometimes you need specific fixations in order to machine the component correctly or to do an appropriate wire EDM. And all of this is taken into account already in the initial setup of the support structures. Okay,
good. And how do you avoid cracks while you're printing titanium metal components? So titanium parts, how do you avoid the cracks?
Actually, we can't avoid them. We have the same problem as everyone else. I mean, I think what we do to avoid them we have cracks like everyone else in this industrial scale-up phase. In the serial production phase, we don't have them anymore, because what we typically do in this scale-up phase, we have a frozen set of parameters. And we also use numerical optimization again, to actually get rid of these cracks. So what do we have to change the orientation? Do we have to change the way we set up the supports? And once all of this is finalized and we have no more cracks, and cracks are usually identified using CT measurements or surface measurements in this case. Once this is aligned, then we have a certified process, and then this certified process after first part analysis, then actually we don't focus on that anymore, and we usually do not see any more cracks. Otherwise, we would have a problem.
Okay, great. Joachim, I'll take one last question, and then it's going to be the time. How do you control the quality of the metal powder?
There we have multiple means to do that. So first, we have a very thorough goods income control. So whenever we get new powder, we just follow basic criteria as flowability, chemical composition, the usual stuff everyone does. And then according to our, let's say, internal as well as customer specifications, for example, we don't reuse powder more than 10 times. There are some golden rules we have to follow, even though we know we could use it more often. But we just don't do it. And after every recycle run, we also do again the chemical analysis and again measure powder the size distribution and so on. So this is quite a costly and time-intense process we follow here.
Well, thank you, Joachim, for this really interesting presentation. I'm sure you'll stick around if people want to ask you any questions.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, thank you so much. And
happy to answer. Yeah, thanks
Have
for
a
the
nice day.
opportunity and
Thank you.
good conference
Bye.
going on. Bye. Thank you.